2 to 3 minutes and we are going to start, friends. Shua is already here. Shua has also joined.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Umi has joined.
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Yes, I can see the list for your daily task. So, in 2 minutes, I'm going to begin. Let me ask our guest, Dr. Dilip Barat, sir.
Hello.
Yes, hello, sir. Good morning once
Yeah.
again.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Sir, you are all set.
Yes, I am all set. Yeah, I'm all set.
Your long wire is also connected.
Yeah, it is connected. Yeah.
Okay. So let me tell you, sir, as we begin now, we have a very interesting classroom here, and we have Dairisa from Shillong, and Shafia and Alia from Srinagar, Kashmir, and we have Jishnu from Kerala, Asha also. We have West Bengal friends, Dhritiman and Shua. We have Vijay from Indore and Renish from Delhi and Parul. All the people, only few people from Mumbai and Maharashtra. Rakesh and Shweta from Mumbai, and I think Rekha and Raju and Rajabhau Mane from Sangli, Satara, Khamgaon. Nilima is also here. So we have not only taken teacher participants from multiple states, but also since we started, I have been observing that it is very appropriate to call this classroom, as I mentioned earlier, mini India classroom. So I am sure, sir, you will enjoy the talk with the people after your session, after your lecture is delivered, when we give time to them for discussion, 15 to 20 minutes. Let me begin, sir, now. And I welcome you, sir, on behalf of UGC, HRDC, University of Mumbai, and Department of English. And dear participants, let me tell you, Dr. Dilip Barad is not only a well-known teacher in Bhavnagar and Gujarat, but also online. You can see he is very active teacher of English, and he has multiple areas of interest. He does a lot of publishing and ppt spread, and also communication with the students. I think he has one person in this country, I believe Dr. Dilip Barad, has time more than 24 hours. So, congratulations, sir, to you for being so popular, and I'm so glad we got you today here. And also, dear participants, let me tell you, when Dr. Bharat came for the first time to Mumbai University, it was also a refresher lecture, and that refresher was also coordinated by me. And then we met a few times in the programs, and every time I found that he has something new to say, and he is always well prepared, and he always takes care that his sessions should be beneficial and useful to all the listeners. So, sir, please allow me to call Dr. Deepa to formally introduce you to my batch of teachers.
Okay.
A very
Thanks.
good,
Dr. Deepa.
yes, ma'am. A very good morning to one and all. It is my immense pleasure to welcome Professor Dr. Dilip Bharat sir for the lecture on the topic Integrating Technology in Teaching Literature. At present, Dr. Dilip Bharat is teaching English literature and language to the postgraduate students of the MK Bhavnagar University. He has 23 years of experience of teaching to students belonging to various faculties like commerce, management, computers, humanities, and social sciences. His areas of interest are innovative use of ICT in teaching English, literatures and literary theories. He has conducted workshops on use of web tools for teaching in national and international conferences. He has penned books and articles on Thomas Hardy, Kamala Das, modern communication and web tools for English teaching. Recently, he has completed an e-content development project funded by Ministry of HRD, Government of India. The short video lectures developed under this project are uploaded on YouTube. He has completed UGC research project on technology and teaching English language and literature, blended learning. He has successfully completed online courses from University of Oregon, USA. He has completed several online courses on topics like technology and ethics, the Ohio State University, understanding research methods, University of London, Greek and Roman mythology, University of Pennsylvania, assessment and teaching of 21st century skills, University of Melbourne, shaping the way we teach English, paths to success in ELT, University of Oregon. He is recognized as research supervisor by MK Bhavnagar University, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar Open University and CU Shah University. On behalf of HRDC Mumbai University and all the participants, I once again welcome you, sir. The audience is yours.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank
thanks
you,
a lot.
Dr. Deepa. Thank you, Dr. Dilip, sir. And also, I request you to start your session now.
Thanks, Dr. Bhagyashree Verma and the participant who introduced me in this August gathering. My topic is about, obviously, very interesting topic is taken for this refresher course, and that is literature, teaching literature, then and now. People are talking a lot about teaching language, English language, but very rarely we are talking about teaching literature and literary practices. And then very interesting point, then and now. Now, like, for example, we obviously now has become very significant for us because this now is much different from what was this now in January or in February, post-March, right from the lockdown time, the COVID crisis, pandemic. Our now has tremendously changed. And when we think of teaching, obviously, we all are challenged. We all have tried many new things. Most of us wouldn't have done teaching the way we are doing teaching now. This refresher course is an example. We would have never thought of an online kinds of programs unless it is forced upon us by MHRD or UGC that compulsory people have to do such kind of a thing. But now normally people willingly, if they say that, well, if there is an alternative of online, I don't want to go physically. As Bhagyashree madam was also telling that she rarely goes out. Corona crisis, and we all have to be very careful because it is not that we are afraid that I will catch up the virus, but the concern is that I may spread a virus. And that is a grave concern, that I should not be a super spreader. I should not be a spreader. And that's why we have to be careful rather than, we are not frightened of meeting students in face-to-face environment or other thing. But the concern is that we should not become a spreader. So all these things has made us realize that we need to think of teaching in this environment in different capacity. People like us, many of you also might be those teachers who love to deal with technology a lot. Technology is a kind of a passion in a classroom environment, face-to-face environment also. For me, it was so my UGC project or my MHRD project or many online courses that I have done, I have learned a lot from all these things also. Today, I would like to work out on several things. I'm sitting now in a mini studio that I have prepared here. This was a language lab where students used to come and study. But now this language lab has become a teaching learning laboratory. And so I keep on experimenting with various things in those things. So a couple of things we are going to see today also. Right now, what you are seeing here, for example, Meet, Google Meet is a kind of a tool which was, as compared to Zoom, as compared to WebEx or Microsoft Teams, it was of a not very powerful tool. But now today, Meet has become a very interesting and very powerful tool for the teachers. It works on low bandwidth. Now, when I talk about Meet, I'm also talking about teaching literature now, because now we are teaching literature through this platforms, digital platforms there. And like I'm able to display my names here, my side here, and then several other things that I'm going to do. This all features are the additional features which Meet has opened up very recently now, and you can do very interesting things with all these things also there. So in this lab, I have prepared one glassboard. So I will just have a display or demonstration of glassboard. And I don't want to talk about the glassboard, but we'll talk about our topic. And through that mode, we are going to do that. Behind me, there is a black curtain. Well, I will switch over to a green curtain afterwards when I use chroma key and my PPT slides and that also. So that also will keep on watching here. Let me switch over my camera to the another camera of my glassboard. I am switching over the camera to the another one, and this is my another camera. And in case there is any kind of volume breakup or other thing, please let me know in this. Yeah, I'm using a little bit longer cable I am using here, so that I am audible to everybody there. Okay, so teaching literature then and now, and in that using technology, technology in literature class, in literature classroom. That is what we are here to talk about there. But I would like to say, what is this then, or what was this then at that time? And how do we see now today? Very briefly, let us locate. Let us locate our discussion into a particular parameter there. Well, then was, we can say, chalk and talk. Yeah, that was then. There was blackboard. Then it was blackboard. Then there was a reading of literature. There was a recitation of literature, poems. Yeah. There was a role play, or say performance of the play. Yeah, performance was then. There were discussions and deliberations in the classroom. There were lots of questions and answers face to face. Yeah, face to face mode that we were dealing with those kinds of things. And there was very interesting approach that was a new critical approach when we dealt with poems specifically. Then we had I.A. Richards. Practical criticism, and poems normally without title, without name of the author, we used to give to the students, and we used to do. That was then we were doing those things there. Well, I don't say that these are immaterial things. These are very important things. When the new thing comes, it doesn't mean that it always has to come by erasing the past. It is not so. I always give a metaphor of media, like when there were pamphlets, and then there was a print media, and when radio came, people thought that now print media is dead. And then when television came, people thought radio is dead. Well, we know today that all three modes of media exist even in digital era, even in the era of internet. Print media, radio, television, and internet, they all simultaneously exist together there. That is a very interesting metaphor or an example to keep in mind when we talk about then and now. Then and now, they both get assimilated into those kinds of things there. When I am using this glass board here, when I'm talking with you, obviously I am using this methods of past, this all past methods I am using here, but I am using technology also. There is a camera there. There is a glass board here, which is not a kind of a technology, but used as a technology. There is Meet in between us. There is microphone in between us. And then we are having a talk with each other, remotely located. We all are remotely located. Some of you are from Shillong, some from Jammu and Kashmir, from down south, from far east. And I am in this western corner of India, just above Maharashtra, in Bhavnagar, in Gujarat, from where we all are connected with nooks and corners of India there. Well, but this is Chalk and Talk. It was a small space in which it was happening. There was a space Well, here we are perhaps spaceless. Spaceless we have become, or rather we can say our space has widened. It has perhaps widened its capacities there. Now, when we look at this now, it all began with the idea of what we call it presentation tools. Presentation tools. It all began with presentation tools. We call it PPT very popularly, or we call it PowerPoint presentation. And many a times there is neither power nor point in our presentation. I'm also going to show you a presentation. I also shared an advanced prepared PowerPoint presentation, and maybe the organizers may share with everybody those. But then what we do right now, the interaction or the way I talk and the way everything is unfolding, that beauty of teaching literature, sometimes we miss in presentation tools. Now, remember, I am not against presentations. I am not against PowerPoint. I have prepared many PowerPoints uploaded on SlideShare, and I have given many talks, many workshops on how to make effective PowerPoint presentations. But I believe that if you only want to deal with words, and not with images and moving pictures, then don't use PowerPoint presentation. For words, Blackboard is good, Glassboard is good. For a new technology, Glassboard is a good idea. But only for the words, don't go for presentations. It is better that you need some images, so it is fine there. But it all started, this now begin with this. We had lots of film screenings. That was one of the most advanced form of technology in our literature classroom, film screenings, performance of the plays recorded and then shown in the classroom through projector, through television, video cassette players, video record players, and many those things. We started with VHS, video recording, video cassettes, and television we started, and then we came down to the projectors and digital projectors and other kinds of things. But that was the things there. We had audio visual books. We had audio books. Very interesting. When we were teaching Paradise Lost, we had a very interesting audio book. When we teach To the Lighthouse, there is very interesting audio book about To the Lighthouse. So those audio books also we used there. And then came this internet. Then there is this internet revolution, which is obviously changing the dynamics of our classrooms, changing the dynamics of our teaching literature and other things. And this is what we will concentrate a little bit more on this. With this came what we call is search engine, search engines. And this search engines played a very significant role in changing the dynamics of our teaching literature. And I will give a couple of examples for this when we talk about now what we are doing, or what many of you might be doing. That is the aspect here. Search engines changing the dynamics of teaching literature, poems, plays in our classrooms there. Then with this, what also came later on is very significant is we have now software. We have softwares to read literature. Read literature, and by read I means analyze. Reading is not only like there is a website and automatically website is read. So if I am visually impaired, then also I can listen. Well, not that reading, I say reading in a larger context, and that is to analyze literature. Software to analyze literature, big data mining, digital humanities is what we enter here, DH, what we call it for that, data mining, reading literatures of hundreds of years simultaneously together there. And then we also had machines writing literature, machines writing literature. So that is what we call is generative literature, generative literature there. Now that is now. So obviously, if our modes and methods of teaching and these things are very important, which we can modify, adapt into the now environment with the help of new technologies that we have here, like Meet or other kinds of things. But at the same time, what becomes very significant today is about analyzing literature like data mining in context of digital humanities. And also we have a new genre of literature, what we call is generative literature there. Now, how are we going to deal with this? So that is the dynamics where we are locating our then and now and using literature for various purpose there. But this is our farthest goal. This is what we think as a farthest goal of reaching out there. But whatever we see or do, whatever way we try to look either from this angle or from this angle, then or now, what was always something very important for us? What was something that was significantly important for us? In case, for example, just a little bit of digression, those who are on the meet, if I'm told that most of you are using laptop to get connected. So you can pin up, if these guidelines are not given, then you can pin up so you can see large screen. You can large screen, and in between also if anybody is sharing, then also my screen will remain static. If you're on mobile device, then rotate your mobile so you can see full screen. Rotate full screen, and then you can pin up the thing. These instructions we have to give to our students also. Most of our students are on mobile phone, so rotating full screen can be seen there. Okay, coming back here, either this then or now, our basic concern obviously was always development of human beings. Developments of human beings. That was always the concern of literature, either then or now. Writing, reading, that is always at the core, and other things are there. So what we had is this concern of moral sense and ethical behavior. Ethical behavior. That was always at the center of the, now I'm not trying to be a custodian of culture, or I'm trying to be a Plato kind of a person who would like to say that, well, we don't want poets in our society, not in that Platonic sense. If I want to use the word Platonic, that I am trying to moralize the things there, but a much deeper sense of morality, which even when Nietzsche says God is dead and he thinks about Superman, Übermensch, he also had a deep moral sense of that. So in that larger context, in that even the existentialist also had a deep moral concern of ethical behavior. That in that it was always there, it was there also, it is here also. And we will see at the last part of a thing why this has become more important for us now than it was ever before. And because of the kind of development that is happening in artificial intelligence, because of the kind of thing that is going on in artificial intelligence, our concern has become more graver. That is what we will see there. Well, so switching over to my slides, I would like to say that discuss this, that what do we mean by literature, or how do we define literature in this context there. Then how we can incorporate or integrate technology in the classroom. Briefly, some of the ideas I will share, some of the links I will give you, which you can check it out later on. And then the last part is why we need to do this, and we will end with this why here. These are the concerns for this, and we will touch upon one another aspect in this there. Now I am switching over to my laptop to show you the screen. I will take a moment to even change the curtain here. And as you know that normally we are all alone working in our labs, so we have to do all the work. Then the teachers cannot afford to have not many people here. So
Itu gelas sur Ibrahim.
Mama. Mommy.
Thank you. Georgetta?
I think somebody from Shillong is perhaps having a talk with a kid. It seems to be like a voice there. Well, so now you can see that when you want to use this, you have to have black cloths and black curtain also. Glass board, the necessity is the black. And when you want to use chroma key and other things, then you can have a green curtain behind you. I'm changing my camera again to switch over to the another visual. Okay, so I am here now on this, and I'm working on OBS software. So OBS camera feature that is here, which helps in working out on these aspects. Yeah, and this is the slides which I wanted to. We'll talk about now. Yeah. Just a minute. I will just take a few seconds to just change over the things. Yeah, to apply a chroma key. Chroma key. Those who are good with technology and OBS, they will understand that what I am trying to do here to change this dynamics here. Okay. And this is all a part of dealing with literature, technology, dealing with technology in the things. This all is an integral part of the things that we try to do there. Okay. Okay. So I am there now on the screen with my PPT in the background. For some of the small fonts, you may have to bear with me for a while. By and large, things will go on smoothly there. Okay. So our concern was what, why, and how. That is where we left our discussion earlier in that part there. So literature or English literature, when we talk this concern of what is very important to decide here when we talk about that. Now, when we see literature or teaching literature in the classroom, one very important thing is that this may not be applicable to regional literature. So if there are teachers of Marathi or regional language or Gujarati or Hindi or local language, they may perhaps may not find some of the ideas which we try to discuss, that why we need technology in literature classroom, a misfit, perhaps a misfit kind of a thing can also be seen in that idea there. Okay, so that is the concern. So this is English literature we are talking about, English literature there, and we will have to define English literature there. When we think of, when we have moved in 20th century to 21st century, we have changed our definition from literature to literatures. So we used to have literatures in English, where it is not the language of the people of Britain or England, but it is the language of the entire world. So people in Africa, New Zealand, India, the entire globe, they keep on writing in English language. That all is literatures in English. But then we also had Englishes. We were not having only one English where people were writing. So post-colonial argument became very powerful. And then what we started having was Englishes. And then we had translations, comparative studies, cultural studies, political science, anthropology, globalization, economics, everything got merged into the study of English literature. And we started calling it English studies there. So now that what we call English studies perhaps is still not a kind of a nomenclature fit for Marathi studies, Hindi studies, Gujarati studies, or any local language kind of a thing. That is still not there. Well, lots of translation has to happen. Lots of comparative studies has to happen in those areas. Then perhaps they also can try to work. So we are categorizing literatures in Englishes as a kind of a category where we think of the need of technology in our classroom dynamics there. So when we question, is there a technology in the English literature? Now I think English literature is very well understood concept. It is not any literature classroom. Now when we say this, why we need to talk about this also is that we are facing a kind of a crisis of having what we call pedagogical processes of teaching this English literature. New research on learning, exploring personal teaching experiences are not happening a lot. We are not talking a lot about teaching practices in literature classroom, the way perhaps I.A. Richards and that group of new critics were practicing in the class and also trying to do those kinds of a thing. Today with technology or whatever we do, we are not doing lots of research, or we're not asking those questions. That's why also this is very important concern there. There is a very interesting work in this line, and that is written by Elaine Shalter, teaching literature. Elaine Shalter has thrown a very interesting insight into this work, and this also can be a kind of a seminal work for all of us, that in what way this anxiety of teaching. I have seen many teachers of literature, they don't like teaching. They in a sense, like they love literature, so they want to talk about literature, but teaching is a science, teaching is an art, and teaching also is connected with whether learning is happening or not. So I may love going in my class and recite poems and dialogues from plays and wonderful, but if learners are not interested, if I'm not able to cultivate the interest of learners, the teaching is incomplete, and then there is anxiety of teaching there. So that is where teaching is incorporated with learning aspect there. Theories of teaching literature, methods, and Elaine Shalter talks about technology also. Technology as a part of methods in teaching literature, and gives a very interesting aspect of this. That technology is very helpful in looking at this also. So this and this, when we say after this we come to this define English literature, why it is different from regional aspect. Another thing is this, that teaching foreign literature poses several problems. And what is this foreignness of English literature or literatures in English is cultural anonymity, social code of conduct, religious inconspicuousness, mythical aloofness, difference in shared collective unconscious, the geographical remoteness, the historical distance. This all plays a very, very vital role in understanding English literature, the foreign literature, or differentiating it from what we see as regional literature, or where there is perhaps people may not find a need for the technology the way we want to make the case for this year. So let me illustrate to give some of the examples that how this cultural anonymity, social code of conduct, religious inconspicuousness, mythical aloofness, collective unconscious, difference in that, geographical remoteness, historical distance plays a vital role. A couple of examples very quickly, let us touch upon that. I'm taking an example from I.A. Richards' Practical Criticism. Maybe you may not be able to see the poem very clearly. The fonts are a little bit smaller, and bandwidth may also play a vital problem in this also. But I will read some of the important lines. No need to read the entire poem. We don't have to read, but some of the lines are very important there. This is taken from Practical Criticism, Figurative Language. I.A. Richards gives several examples of reading poem, and he's analyzing the problems in reading poems and other things there. It's very well-known work, so most of us are aware about them. Now, while we were discussing this poem in our classroom, we stuck at one point, and this word was, it is written here in red color, but maybe not visible to everybody because of low bandwidth or the other issues there. It was that while below, the hawthorns smile like milk splashed down. Hawthorns smile like milk splashed down from noon's blue pitcher over mead and hill. Well, we can understand that it seems to be a nature poem. It seems a nature poem. We were also discussing Nathaniel Hawthorne. Nathaniel Hawthorne's A Scarlet Letter. So the word hawthorns with capital H, when we asked the students, what do you mean by this? Obviously, they thought that this is a surname. This is the last name of somebody, and maybe is a references to Hawthorne, that is somebody there. Then, but there is a simile. Hawthorns are smiling like milk splashed down. Now, this was very difficult. Some after looking at something, some people said that, well, hawthorns are bushes also, bushes in the geographical locations in UK. These are bushes also there. So it may be that, well, if there are bushes, then how this milk is placed down, how do you connect this? Milk is placed, how will you read this? How will you open this? And then there is noon's blue picture. Well, you said that it may be afternoon. Noon is personified, and so it is capital N, and it is talking like noon with a pitcher, blue color in the hand, is moving along mead and hill, moving along meads and meadows and hill, contours of the hills going on. Maybe that is the image there. Well, we discussed, well, let us ask Google. We said that, well, let us go to Google search engine and let us ask Google what answers we are getting when we try to open up these lines here. We got an image that hawthorns are shrubs, and they also have white flowers. And when you look at this from above, like a cloud, because there is an imagery that cloud is moving, and so your camera is in the sky as if there is an aeroplane going on, and somebody is taking a shooting above the thing. That is the cloud's way of looking down. When you look from the top down, then you find, or you get an impression that of splashed milk over meadows and hills. When we see from above the sky, there is clouds perspective. The clouds perspective that comes here, and this comes there. What is helping us? This Google image, Google search engine is helping us in opening up the problem that was there in this part of the poem. Noon's blue picture was very difficult. It was very, very tough to see this idea. That was very tough to open up this idea, because Google was giving the image, but is it the same image or not? That was very tough to identify, because Google gives millions of images. Now, how to locate that also was equally tough. Yeah, so most of Google gave us images of fallen flowers outside the blue picture is compared with the way white flowers of hawthorn were visible to the cloud, like splashed milk over mead and hill. Well, when we connected this thing, then we realized that maybe this is what it says. And then we found this image, this painting. And this was Susan Noon's painting. Noon was not afternoon. Noon was a surname. Hawthorn, we thought is a surname, was not a surname. It was not the last name. It was shrub. Noon, we thought it is afternoon. It is not known, it is last name. Now see how interesting the literature study becomes in the classroom when we use Google search engine and we do activities with these kinds of things there. Well, when we are talking about Dr. Faustus, when we are reading Dr. Faustus in the chorus says that story is about some great scholar known as Dr. Faustus. He was born here and there. He was of humble origin. The parents were not very rich, but then he grew to the importance of being a great scholar. The doctor, he got the name, so he became Dr. Faustus there. But at the same time, Chorus is comparing this with one myth. And it writes that till, it rose to the height till, swollen with cunning and a self-conceit, his waxen wings did mount above his reach, and melting heavens conspired his overthrow. And the wings, waxen wings, melted, heavens conspired his overthrow. Now, to understand this, we gave these words to Google, and Google gave us very interesting paintings. These paintings like this we got, this, and then we said that this is the flight of Icarus, Daedalus and Icarus, father and son. They were imprisoned, and then father had the art of craftsmanship of making wings. And then they flew from the prison and told his son that don't fly near the sun, otherwise your wax will melt and you will fall down. But the sun is falling down, the father is in control. Now see, even these paintings, we cannot go to the museum. Now, if it is the Marathi literature or Gujarati literature or any regional literature, I can go to the local paintings, local museums, and I can go to local galleries and see about our myths and other things. But when there is remoteness of mythical connection also, at that time, it is not that easy to take our students every time to such kind of a museums. In France, Louvre Museum, if you go, you can find this, but you can't take your students to Louvre Museum. It's a very difficult task, but you can take them virtually in those things, and Google search can help us in bringing this very interesting images to understand this concept. This very idea can be connected with what we call it as modernism or postmodernism or structuralism or post-structuralism. also there. This image was shown in the class in connection with Dr. Faustus's text, and also that image of fall of Icarus. Because this image also came along with that. Google also was giving this image. Now, this was very tough for me also as a teacher initially to see that what is the connection of this with Icarus and Daedalus? What is this? And it was very tough to read this painting, very tough. And then I searched several times. After spending couple of hours, I came to the root of this painting, and then it said that, well, you look in the corner here, I am showing the finger there. There you will see that there is a splash and there are legs being shown. You see here, I'm trying to put a finger there. There are legs. It means that somebody has fallen. Somebody has fallen already, and the splash is there, and then there are legs being shown. But what is this painting trying to say? That farmers are plowing, sailors are sailing, and nobody, there is a shepherd there, there is a shepherd also. But the fall of Icarus has nothing to do with the world. You have fallen, but the world do not care for you. Now, this very idea. Now, in this image, if there was a centrality of the thing where the fall is happening, here it has been shifted to margin. Now, this is a very interesting idea to say Derrida's deconstruction, decentering the center. Two images can make students convince what is decentering the center. And they get convinced, okay, this is what Derrida tries to say, that the very centrality of idea is decentered, and meaninglessness or free play of meaning is what we get from the thing. The meta-narratives of myths, meta-narratives are broken into this modern or postmodernist narrative, or post-structural is also trying to do that. Now, we are just taking help of images. I told you earlier also, PowerPoint presentations should not be used if you don't want to show images in the classroom. If for the words, Blackboard is good enough, Glassboard is good enough for online teaching, but this concept there. A play, Waiting for Godot. A very simple play, simple lines, very interesting lines, very simple. We all are aware about this play also. Some of these words, when we're looking at our willow, green color words I have written there, maybe again you may be facing problem in reading some of the words. Vladimir, I don't know what is this tree. It may be a willow. Where are the leaves? It must be dead, Vladimir says. Estragon says, no more weeping. Now, this was confusing. What is this? A willow, leaves, weeping? What is Beckett trying to say? Is it just wasting words? Is it just passing time? Obviously, no. Obviously, no. He's not wasting time. He's not passing time. It's a very compact play. Each and every word is full of the meaning of absurdity, meaninglessness of human existence. But it has a meaning. If nothingness is the theme, nothingness itself is something. It is something to be explored. Meaninglessness is something to be explored. There, we have explored a lot of meaninglessness in Sushant Singh Rajput's case also, in the suicide, because suicide is an ultimate question for existential philosophers. So the way we have gone inside, meaninglessly into something that was utterly meaningless. Well, but here it is, absurd plays are not that absurd like our medias that keeps on happening. Well, but this, and then when he says that looks to me like a bush, it's not a tree, it looks like a bush, and or a shrub, or a bush, shrub, bush, tree. Well, I thought that there must be something there. I'm not getting the sense of these words there. So I looked into the Google, and I found that in Celtic culture, in Irish culture, they have this weeping willow. When the tree is full of leaves, it seems the tree is weeping. Now imagine, remember this, the tree in Waiting for Godot was without leaves. But when there are leaves, it is weeping. It's a kind of a metaphor which is opposite. When branches are leafless, then we say the tree must be weeping. But here it is opposite. Full of leaves, it says it is weeping willow, like the leaves are dropping down. And in Celtic tradition, in Irish tradition and culture, it is a very interesting symbol of prosperity, of happiness. People do tattoo of these kinds of things there. Now, Beckett also belongs to the Irish tradition. And then now see this aloofness of not knowing what is Irish tradition. I think it is a play coming from the Britain. It must be an English play. It may be English in sense of English people also, but it is not English people, it is Irish people. And it is a play coming from the tradition of that. And then this image is helping me to explore the deeper repercussions of the connection that comes there. But this was even tough. This bush shrub dialogue was even tough. And then when I explored, I came to know that Moses listens God's commands through burning bush. And when he was on the mountain, at that time, the bush was burning, and it was the sound, if I make a sound, third sound comes from the burning of bushes. When the branches are burning, what sound we get is third sound. And he might have listened third sound, or the sound of the burning. Nobody is speaking anything. Neither in Bible nor in Upanishad, nobody is speaking. What we have is the voice of thunder only. What we have is only voice of thunder. T.S. Eliot made use of the word da. He says Prajapati in Upanishad, Brihanaryanyak Upanishad. He listened the voice of thunder, and thunder's first time said da. It is Gadgadati. It is da, the sound of only thunder. There is no language. Gods, Beckett perhaps tries to say, remind that gods do not have a language. Had they been with the language, we would have born with the language. Language is man's construction. It is not a natural construction. It is not given by gods. If there is any divine power, it doesn't understand our language. It perhaps understands our emotion and feelings. But it is beyond Bhav Vishwa. It is Bhav Vishwa. It is not the Vishwa of language, of words and meaning there. Beckett is obviously making a satire on Christian religion also in the play. And this sound, and this is becoming a revelation to reading that, okay, there was no voice of God. People said that God is invisible. God is invisible, but the voice is heard. Well, this said there was not even a voice was there. It was mere interpretation. It was mere interpretation. There is nothing but hermeneutics. Nothing but hermeneutics only. And people get an idea of what is hermeneutics also very quickly, because that also is a part of post-structuralist discourse when we say what is hermeneutics there. So paintings, a play or a poem, how it keeps on helping us in looking at this, and we can give innumerable examples of this. This is a very rich area where we need to do lots of research, that how Google search engine or any search engines or internet is helping us in better or deeper understanding of literature. Sometimes I deeply question that then, when there were no search engines, when teachers were not able to go and explore all this thing in a deeper way, their reading of literature or their teaching of literature might be very incomplete, Many of those things they might not be able to understand. They might be skipping larger part of literature and doing only thematic study, only character studies. But very deep understanding of culture, of religion, of history, of geography, that was perhaps not happening. Now, those all possibilities has opened up because of technology integration in our classrooms there. Second part, how we do. I would like to share briefly about my own case study there in classroom practice there. Integrating technology is a kind of a thing. We don't use only technology, but integrate technology. And when we integrate technology, it is a pre-planned kind of a thing. When you plan use of technology, we have to think of what kind of CMS, content management system, or LMS, learning management system, you are going to use. That is your first primary goal. Then how you are going to connect all the students with digital communication link, second important part. And then it will be blended mode. So how are you going to blend your teaching and what you want to explore through the blended mode? And after doing everything, ultimately at the end, what do you want? Ultimately at the end, what do you want there? Well, while I am speaking something here, I would request the participants, if you can do multitasking, then I request you to, I'm putting a link in the chat box. You can just keep on exploring this link also. So you can simultaneously keep on watching there. I have put a link known as dilipbharat.com PBL, that is Project Blended Learning. That link is given. So you can open that link and you will come to a blog, and you click on that blog on the very title of digital portfolio. Well, let me also display along with that thing here. Okay.
Sir, your session is so lively and engaging that we don't want to go on any other link.
Okay. Let me show that here, so it will be easier for the participants to see. If you so this, when you click on the link, you will come to this blog. You are seeing here on my screen, and when you click on this, then you will come to this website, digital portfolio website here, and here you will find the work on which we do the things. And if you will click on sample digital portfolio, this link is sample digital portfolios, then you will explore some of the samples of our students there. And here you will find that several digital portfolios. So what the point that I am making is that when you integrate technology in the classroom and you work on various kinds of things, whatever work students are doing, it all should be incorporated till end, and it should be converted into digital portfolio, that students after 2 years of study in a department or 3 years of study in college, when they go out, they have all digital resources of online tests they have given, the blogs they have written, assignments they have submitted, presentations they have made, everything. So we used to make video recordings and everything of their presentations also, and we give them their video recordings also. So whatever presentations they make in the classroom, they are video recorded. So like nothing is wasted. The purpose is, how do you do? Nothing is wasted. Whatever way digital resources are being used by the students, everything becomes integral part of these things there. So later on you can explore those links and you can see that what is the further goal of working out on how part of technology use and how we do that. But that is how we incorporate technology to see this result here there. And what we do is we use Google Classroom. We use Google Classroom for our as our learning management system. Now, how Google Classroom helps us is that when you do a proper setting in Google Classroom, you will get the progression of student also. So when you take an online test or you have given assignment, you will do grading also, you will give feedback also of all those things, and all those grading, all those feedback and everything also is recorded in Google Classroom. So all the students will get their percentage, where are they standing, and it is continuous internal assessment. We use this word a lot, continuous internal assessment in CBCS system, choice-based credit system, semester system, but actually continuously every week a test, a thinking activity, a Sunday reading is given, everything is evaluated, teacher is giving feedback in qualitative and quantitative way. Quantitative is managed by Google Classroom, qualitative feedback is also given with the help of rubric in Google Classroom, all those things which we keep on doing. And that is our part of working on what we call it how part of working with the technology here there. So that is this part of how we look at what we consider as the how part of the technology integration there. Flip learning also we do in a very interesting way. Our concept is like giving videos in advance of any of the topic that we want to teach. And when we come together in the classroom, our concern is like this was in face-to-face mode. Now in online mode, we have changed our mode. In face-to-face mode, we used to ask students that after watching the video, you will have to ask at least one question from each video. If in one lesson plan, I have given 5 videos, then all students will at least ask 5 questions. And what they have to do in the classroom, they have to come in the class and they have to write their question on the board. They have to write their question on the board. And then once all the questions are written, teachers will analyze all the questions one by one. So it is the students who are asking the questions and teacher is answering. Flip learning. It is not the teacher is asking the question and students are answering, but students are asking the questions and teacher has to answer all those questions. There are sometimes very simple questions. There are sometimes very tough questions. Sometimes students connect this dot with a very remote dot, and it is very rigorous, very tough for teachers also to engage in flip learning classroom. Many times I said that teachers don't do that because they are afraid of this live discussions, and it takes a lots of toll on teachers learning, teachers understanding, teachers exploration, and teacher has to keep internet constantly open in the classroom. So you have to tell, well, let me connect, let me see what you are trying to say, let me Google out something, and then you try to answer, because the knowledge is so immense, growing in this digital era, that we cannot say that I know everything. Nobody can say that we know everything there. So this is the how part of using technology in this. And final part is why. Final part is why we have to do this. And I always say that all teachers should have their own whys also. We should have a why should I use technology? Like, why should I teach? Why should I teach in this way? Why should I not teach in another way? And I should have my own answers also. If I use technology a lot in the classroom, I have my own answers for that also, why it is useful and in different ways. But here, literature, specifically for literature, if we think of, then we want to see some of these questions. Is that obviously we have that literature and technology is anti each other also. Many times I make a hypothesis that if we make a triangle, then in this three angles of triangle, I will put literature at the top because I'm teacher of student of literature, so I will like to put it at the top. At one corner, I will put religion. At another corner, I will put science and technology. Three angles, and these three angles don't meet with each other. They don't meet with each other. They are having cross things. Many people say that what is problem with religion and the science and religion, we can understand. Science and religion, this point we can understand that they have a problem. But literature has a problem with religion also, and science and technology both also. Sometimes we can explore those ideas. Beckett is an example of how it is there. But this idea that this science and technology and literature, they are anti also. So I give examples of literatures like Brave New World, Aldous Huxley's work, or 1984, and Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and very interesting. So that all examples we can give to prove the point that, see, all this literature try to say that be careful about technology. Digital humanities is a very oxymoron kind of a word. Digital and humanities, they don't agree. So why they don't agree, and there are fair points also of disagreement. We don't blindly follow technology. So the fair point of agreement is that whenever technology is used for surveillance, whenever technology is used for control, then we are anti-technology, because humanities, literature, humanities is basically for freedom of spirit. And anything that is trying to curtail the freedom, the concept of freedom, obviously the people of humanities will be first to stand against. And there is no surprise that most of the universities which are agitating a lot against power, political power, are humanities universities. Obviously, it is what they are learning in humanity. We all are teaching also. We are all supposed to be blamed for a kind of an anarchy that spreads in society. Well, but then that freedom, the spirit of freedom is ultimately, and if technology tries to control in any way, then we will be there to resist the idea that it is for empowerment. Technology is for empowerment. It is not for surveillance or for control there. Now that is that point of science and technology and humanities, that they are always at conflict with each other there. But digital humanities, they obviously have this idea. Digital, obviously, very simple thing. People say that if your political power, your politicians allow the spread of technology, it means there is something in technology that they can control the people. Otherwise, they won't allow the free spread of technology as such. And we have to be very alert to that. We have to always be alert to the digital tools, or very idea of digital also there. But at the same time, what is very important here is that English departments, this is what Matthew Kirschenbaum wrote in 2010. His article was, "What is digital humanities and what's it doing in English departments?" He made a very interesting proposition that when digital tools started coming into humanities, it was English departments which was with open arms to grab digital tools. It was not Marathi department, it was not Gujarati department, I mean, it was not regional literatures, it was English literature department. It was not French, it was not Spanish, Italian, Chinese, or Russian departments. It was English departments, which was open to that. And Kirshenbaum makes an argument that English studies makes us open to varied ideas, very opposite ideas also. And this openness of English departments helps us a lot in trying and testing everything. And this openness is to be celebrated every time there. Now, this is a very interesting point. All literatures of the world, if they get translated in one common language, it is English language. It is English language. And when we study English studies or English literature or philosophy or criticism, we have ideas coming from France, we have ideas coming from around the globe, around the world. And that is why we are mentally more open than other people normally are in humanities also there. Another argument, he said that when the coding started happening of digital thing, it started happening with the alphabets of English language. The coding started happening. And so English literature, whenever people started digitizing a literature, it was an added advantage for English literatures. So when Victorian Web project, a very early project, Victorian Web for preparing a digital resource of literature started happening, because the first step was the same one, that you should have digital repository of everything. That was the first step in that aspect. And when it started happening, it was English literature. So today also, the way you will find English literatures on internet, you won't find any other literatures, because it all started with that thing. And so English literatures departments are at advantage point, and we should not miss this advantage point. We should not miss on this advantage point there. So these are very interesting argument Matthew Kirshenbaum gave and this things there. It also is very interesting to understand in this knowledge era or digital era that at least this century, maybe up till coming 30-40 years, if you don't see far off the future, then digital era is going to rule. Digital tools are going to rule. Corona crisis has given us ample proof that in these moments of crisis in 21st century, we are going to be saved by digital tools. When we will not be able to go to libraries, physical libraries, what is going to help us is virtual libraries. Digital repositories are going to help us. When we did couple of webinars, national and international webinars during lockdown, we shared resources also on the blog. That when our topic was pandemics and literature, and people were not reading pandemic a lot. Pandemic and literature, people were not reading. It was just 100 years back, 1918, Spanish flu, modern literature. But we have never think that what T.S. Eliot has done with pandemic. We have never thought what Virginia Woolf has done with pandemic. They all have suffered pandemics. But then when we were talking about the history of literature, a pandemic was almost absent from our history. It was almost absent from our consciousness of literary history or literary sensibility as such there. Now we have works coming up, and we are rereading modern literature with an angle. And there is Otka's one interesting book is published by Cambridge University Press, Viral Modernism. Viral Modernism, that book is published, and it is trying to look at all this modern literature with the idea of pandemic. Now we are looking at those things there. So this pandemic has proved that digital resources are going to make your show run. It is going to make your show run. Other sources will not be allowed to go to libraries. And then what will you are not going to you are not allowed to be going to schools and colleges. Digital thing, and this is going to rule for until what time it is going to rule? Well, I see that until meteors attack our satellite systems. If all our satellite systems in the universe are being destroyed by Ulka, by meteor attack, then perhaps we will not have digital connections also. All our satellite connections will be broken, no electricity, no internet. And then perhaps we have to think the 18th century mode, the Victorian mode of doing the kinds of thing. But till then, We know that technology people always keep backup plan. Always keep backup plan. They are keeping watch on all kinds of meteors also, where the meteors are going, in which direction, how you can divert the direction of satellite or meteor also people are working on. Elon Musk kind of people are the role models or heroes of this digital era there. So in this era, where we see that it is going to end only with tremendous Ulka Varsha meteor attack in the universe till then, but till then, anything that is not digitized will cease to exist as knowledge. This is what Ganesh Devi has also said. Ganesh Devi, also who studied on the language of tribal people, that if you will not digitize the dying languages, the languages are going to die. Digitize everything. So that is the mantra for today's era, that that which is not digitized will cease to exist as knowledge. And that is why we have to think about digital a lot in our literature classrooms also, in our writing of literature to reading of literatures everywhere. This is a very important part for us to explore here there. Digitization of literature also leads us to what we call is generation of literature, and then that also. So when we see these examples like what is this digital doing there, and we were asking a question earlier that you can't write poetry on a computer. Many people used to say that I want to hold a pen in the hand, then only my imagination works. If I don't hold a pen, then my imagination does not work there. Well, people like Ernest Hemingway, Nobel laureate, Ernest Hemingway, 1950s. He used to write a lot on typewriter. If you see the film biography, Hemingway and Gellhorn, I think Martha Gellhorn, then you will see throughout the night, Ernest Hemingway would stand and keep on writing with tremendous speed. So people like Ernest Hemingway, even when there were no computers, were using typewriters to type, and they never required a pen for the imagination. These are all habits of mind. This is nothing but habit of mind. If you have a habit of mind to write, then your mind works when you write. If you cultivate a habit of writing when you see the screen, and when your thumb starts working, then your mind operates when your screen and your thumb starts working. When you have this habit of typing, it starts working with this. It is nothing but habit of mind. We have grown into a laptop era. So we said laptop typing is very important. Today's generation is growing into thumb era. They are working with tablets and mobile phone. So for them, the thumb is the very important aspect of doing the things also there. So psychologically, so you can't write a poetry is an old question. The new question is this: can a computer write poetry? Our new question is, can a machine write a poem or not? Forget about a human being. Can a machine write a poem or not? I would like to take a small test of everybody. I'm sharing one Google form with everybody, and I want you to take this test. In the chat, I am sharing this link, and please very quickly. It's very simple. 5 questions are there. And this is like, you will find 5 small poems. You will find 5 small poems there. And you have to, just a minute. I'm just changing the view here. You got the link. You got the link. And, okay, here. Just go through. Read a poem very briefly. And you have to tell whether this poem is written by human being or robot. By computer. Your test is this: a poem by human or a computer, by a human or a computer. That is the test here. So just take a very quick test here. I will see the responses. We will keep on checking here how many of you are responding. You will see the live responses coming up on the screen also. I hope you got the link, everybody.
Yes, sir.
Are you able to open the link?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, quick. 5 poems are there. You just have to read very quick. Small poems are there, and tell whether that poem is written by human being or by the robot. Okay, we are not asking for names of anybody, nothing. We are asking just a simple test. So whatever you will give, your identity will not be revealed. In this, your identity will not be revealed. We are not asking email address or names of anybody. Well, we got 3 responses. Yeah. Okay, 6 response. We'll wait up till maybe 15-20 responses. I hope everybody is able to explore this. Yeah, fine. 9 responses. Yeah. Yeah.
I felt afraid of the poems written by machines.
But this is very interesting. I will share one blog also later on if you want to share with the participants.
Yes.
It's a very interesting work done by this TED talk. Is a very interesting TED talk. Well, the link I will put there.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting research being done. You see on the screen also. Oscar Swartz has done this very interesting research on this topic also.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the link also, in the chat also, so you can later on explore, or even the Google will help to find this resource. TED Talk by Oscar Swartz. Can a computer write poetry? There, and then we have many platforms nowadays to work on this. Okay, 27 responses we have received there. Okay, so fine. When we see the responses, so the first one, like 63% got wrong response. 64 got it wrong. It is the first. It was written by computer, but many of you told that it is written by human being. See, this is the problem. So, like, see, 65% of us are not able to identify whether a poem is written by a computer or a human being.
Yeah.
So, the computer written poems seems to be like a human written poem. So, what we said that imagination is a human capacity. Well, maybe we are in illusion. Things are changing very fast. Artificial intelligence is changing very fast, and it will start do imaginations. So this here many of you got right. 30% got it computer. That was wrong. Here see in between. Say this 53-46. So see the confusion that we have. Almost 50-50. That whether it is a human or a computer. Almost 46% say it is a computer poem, but it is actually a human poem. It is actually a human poem here. So this also there, and I will share this website, so you can check it out on your own later on also. This is also there, that 56% told it is computer, but it is actually a human being, a human written poem here. And this is almost equal. This is almost equal. The last poem is almost going equal. So when we see this poem, the last one, paint the sun, there. Okay? So it is a computer poem. It is a computer generated poem. Paint the sun, the type of perfection, the type of depressed moods there. So we think it is a human poem there. Now, see, I think you understand the point that I am trying to make here, that we are in reading of literature also, we are going to face a kind of a crisis there, which we have to understand as such in different ways, that how we are going to read this literature. This generative literature is a new genre which is coming up, which requires our attention as such there also. That is the concern. So now when we look at this now idea of literature, this is the website botpoet.com, from where these examples were taken, botpoet.com. .com, which you can later on explore. You can do free play also. It also says what is computer poetry, how algorithm functions in that. So lots of things you will find from this website. And Oscar Swartz TED Talk about can computer writes poetry there. We have lots of poem generator machines nowadays, which we call it generative literature. So if you go to poemgenerator.org.uk, you can generate a poem. Now see, the word create, it's not creating a poem, it is generating a poem. So creative literature is becoming generative literature now. And we require new theories to study also. The old theories of 20th century, we say it is a post-theory era, now let go with theory. No, we require new theories now because new way literature is written. Aristotle's theory was old. We got from Aristotelian drama, Greek drama to absurd drama. And then we have Martin Esslin to define what is absurd drama, which is obviously not Aristotelian drama. Plot is the soul is not working with absurd drama. You have to redefine the drama. Now, if machines are writing literature, then you have to redefine the definitions of drama, poetry, and other things also there. So you can try many things. You can people should try publishing a book of poems generated from these all sources. Very recently, I did one kind of an activity I posted on my Facebook. There were lots of hula bulla around this Kangana Ranaut and Maharashtra government and many things. I picked up the hashtags on Twitter. And I gave Twitter to one Dada machine, Dada poem, Dada Dadaism. We have this Dada poem, so Dada poem generator. So
Yes.
I gave, and then it created a very interesting poem, from what was my source? Hashtags, Twitter hashtags of the day. I gave it to the machine. It jumbled up the words like kaleidoscope. When we see in the kaleidoscope, it keeps on changing. And then the poem was generated. And then we had the kind of very interesting thing. So this is where it is going on. During lockdown, we had a very interesting experiments of drama performed over Zoom. Drama performance on Zoom platform. Remotely located people, somebody in Africa, somebody in Australia, somebody in America, and they come on one platform. It is streamed live on Facebook. So Facebook is the stage, Facebook is the theater, and Zoom is your mode of displaying, and everybody sitting isolated in their place, and they perform. Now it is not reading a play; they are performing actually with wonderful timing. They do rehearsal, wonderful timing. And then you watch over Facebook, stream on. If you will find stream on productions on Facebook, then you will find they keep on performing various kinds of online drama performances. Now, very interesting it will be that if I am looking into the theories of literature, now the stage is social media, the mode is Zoom, then what way the play is giving me a kind of a feeling of catharsis. Or how Ras Nishpati is happening. If I go to Bharatnatyam, Natya Shastra, then how this Ras Nishpati is happening, or how catharsis is happening. Well, the experience is completely different. I am just facing a screen. I'm not doing anything else there. So poem generator, we also need to do research analysis. We have to do researching tools also. And I would like to share a couple of examples like Matthew Joker's microanalysis. Well, the participants will also have to appear in a test also. And this all are going to be your questions for your multiple choice questions also. So you have to remember some of the names: Matthew Joker's microanalysis, digital methods, and literary history. This work is a very interesting work. Another work is Aidan and Michel's Uncharted Big Data as a Lens on Human Culture. So cultural study is happening with the help of big data, data mining, culturenomics, and it is helping a lot in reading literature in a wider capacities. Some of the examples they say that when you give literature or any text to the machines, and then if you try to work on, and you say that, well, science and religion I want to see, then you find that 18th century religion is at the top, and then slowly and steadily coming down between the mid of 20th century, religion is going down, science is coming up. And then whenever there is a crisis, like there is a war, there is pandemic, then religion surfaces. Then again, people's faith in religion also increases. Fever and cancer. There were no cancers in 18th century. Now, 20th century, lots of cancer things keeps on happening a lot. New York and London, the world center is shifting from when? Exactly during First World War time. the center from the Europe, from London, started shifting to New York, slowly and steadily there. So these are all some of the things that becomes very interesting. I would like to share one more example about Ngram project, Ngram Google project. And it is a very interesting, I think I still have 15 minutes, no, madam?
Yes, sir.
50, okay, I will end up with it.
Some
Yeah.
time for discussion. People
Okay,
are actually
yeah.
very excited now.
Okay, fine, yeah.
You could give
Ngram,
5 minutes minimum for discussion.
okay, yeah, I will give 5-10 minutes for discussion also. Yeah, I'm just open.
Sir, 11:30 we have another resource person.
Okay, fine. Yeah, exactly 15 minutes we have. Well, this is a books.google.com Ngram project. Ngram, and you will find there. I have given 3 words to this project, and they have a book. This is Google Books. They have a resource of books from 1800 to 2010. And I give 3 words: Albert Einstein, Sherlock Holmes, and Frankenstein. 3 words. And then what I found is that Frankenstein was nowhere in 1805, and even when it is published, there is not much talk about Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And most of the literary historians also did not give proper attention to this particular literary text. It is almost absent. Like we know the feminist discourse about historians and women's writing is not considered more important than the man. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is a glaring example of that also. Then coming down to today, Frankenstein is much talked about than Sherlock Holmes or Albert Einstein also. Today, Frankenstein is a new metaphor to understand digital world, and it is much, but it was not understood. Now, this big data analysis is helping me to support my argument. One, that patriarchal notion of history writing do not give proper space to the women writers, and apart from that, how that work Frankenstein is becoming so important today in digital era also. So this is one part which people can keep on exploring about the things that we tend to see in different capacities there. And coming very quickly to the final part of my discussion there, and then we will have a few questions from everybody here. And this final part, finally, we have a new challenges to be faced here, and that is artificial intelligence and the unconscious bias. Now, see, we were thinking that digital tools are unbiased. Technology is unbiased, but no, it is not so. Technology is coded by human beings. And if software engineers, if they are biased in gender or in color or in nationality or any caste, any way, then their coding also will be biased. And this is proved by this research work by Kirti Sharma and Robin Hauser. And the question, can we protect artificial intelligence from human biases there? So this work also you can see on YouTube or other thing, can we protect artificial intelligence? This work is by Kirti Sharma and Robin Hauser, and they are questioning that our artificial intelligence also is biased a lot. It works in such a way that these are deep questions about gender biases. So on one side, when we are trying to, and see who is going to talk about this, it is going to be humanities which will question all these things. It is literary theories and criticism that is going to question. So in a digital era, there is a growing importance and need of our literary theories of 20th century. You can't say that will go on the days of post-colonialism. No, it is still necessary. Those biases are operating. Gender biases are operating. Class and caste biases are still operating in all those things. Also, that becomes necessary. Finally, moral machine also, because our concern was development of human beings. Yeah, moral sense, ethical behavior, and the kinds of a thing. This website, moralmachine.mit.edu, moralmachine.mit.edu, Massachusetts Institute of Technology is working on this. The experiment is about driverless cars. So, well, they say that if the car is moving on, and is on one side there is a cyclist, one side there is an old person, on at one place there is a kid, and car will have to meet with an accident. Somewhere the car has to meet with an accident. So what will be the choice that car will make? What will be the choice that car will make? Well, the question is that what choice will I make if I am a driver? Whatever choices human beings will make, our artificial intelligence is going to make the same choice. Our driverless car is going to make the same choice which human beings are going to make. So how moral are we? The grave concern that comes to us in all this thing is that what about the programming and conditioning of human being that is happening for centuries? The way culture programs us, the way religious programs us, the way we are conditioned for variety of kinds of a thing. Are we not robots? Are we not mere robots? We think we are human, but are we not robots which are already programmed by our culture, by religion, by family members, by our surrounding to behave or to think in particular way? Don't we go and kill people if somebody tells us? Will not our car go and kill somebody in a similar way? We have guided missiles. We tell a missiles to go and kill, it kills. We have guided missiles in form of human beings also. We tell go and attack and they go and lynch people. So these are the graver concern that becomes very interesting for us in our literature classroom. And technology, artificial intelligence is allowing us to question all these things also there. So while the literary project for making humans human is yet not over, the humanities people have new challenges to make robots human. We also now have to make robots human there. And obviously we need to do lots of research in the pedagogy of teaching literature also. Thank you all of you. We have 10 minutes exactly for questions and answers.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dilip Barad, sir. I am completely spellbound and I do not know where to begin and what to do next. I am just picking up randomly some comments and questions from the chat box, and I'm reserving my observations and comments only for the want of time. I'm actually also excited to discuss so many things, but let us ask the participants. May I call on Rakesh to begin with?
Thank you, ma'am, for the opportunity. Dilip sir, it was really phenomenal how you integrated technology while teaching English literature and the modern methods of its progress. It seemed very outlandish to me because it's very difficult to chase. So the two questions, sir. One is, can you please share all the tech and the infra support that you used with us, so that we can also try to.
Now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And sir, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And
we need another full another session for all those things.
I regret, sir. I could have given you 2 sessions.
yeah. Yes. And sir, the second question.
Next time
Yeah.
like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Very right. And so the second question is, there is some sort. I'm sure that you must have heard this a paradigm. If I say stand taken by one is on one side Elon Musk, other is we have Zuckerberg, who is for artificial intelligence, and Elon Musk going against artificial intelligence. So in this paradigm stand taken by both these tech, I would say intellects of the day. So where does literature like reconcile, and whom does it vest with?
I would say that artificial intelligence is going to stay. It is going to stay, and it is going to change the dynamics of literature also, and lot many things. That is what I see. That it may have its own harms also. We'll try to control the things also, but people are going to explore a lot of AI.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, Rakesh. And let me call Dr. Prithviraj, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. It was really a mesmerizing experience, sir. I am following you through Facebook, your blogs and all that. And this is the time I got an opportunity to say thank you personally. Though on digital space, I'm really thankful, sir. My question is a little bit out of context. How much investment as an institution required to set up the workable ICT-enabled teaching learning classroom lab?
Yeah. Okay, well, we got a very recently a RUSA grant, and this time RUSA, as you all know, RUSA, RUSA grant, they have made a pertinent point that digital classroom should be the priority, to be spending this money there. And our budget was like to make it up to the mark, each and every classroom, to make it world class with all necessary latest technology available, with which can work for next 5 years, because we have to see future also. Technology gets out of date very quickly. Then our budget was like 17 to 19 lakh rupees per classroom. 17 to 19 lakh rupees per classroom. If you are interested, I can share what things we have incorporated in that classroom. Also, you can put an email. My email address is given, so you can put it later on. So I can share what is there. That is up to the mark. But in your own simple classroom environment, you can start working, and within 8,000-10,000 rupees with your mobile device, with this kind of glass board, with this simple curtains that I have behind, we can work out into 8,000-10,000 rupees things also, where we work with a mobile phone. We don't go for high-end kind of a thing also. So from 10,000 to 20 lakh rupees, the range is varying in making our classrooms digital.
Okay, thank you, sir. I will write a mail to you, sir. To know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Prithviraj. Thank you, Bharat sir. And because we have a short of time, let me just go to Umi Tasneem and request her to offer formal vote of thanks. And sir, all the people will be contacting you on your blog, on your email. So now you will get a lot of trouble.
Anytime. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, on behalf of UGC, HRDC University of Mumbai, and the participants of the refresher course in English. I thank you, Dr. Bharat, sir, for this wonderful and brilliant presentation. Your applications of technology in literature and language classrooms have inspired us to make the optimum use of ICTs. Your presentation was so engaging and remarkable. We didn't want the class to end. And I would also like to offer my thanks to Dr. Bhagyashree ma'am for arranging this brilliant session with sir. Thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you, Umi. And once again, thank you, Dr. Bharat sir. I was also so engrossed in your session that I forgot to write any notes. So that is one thing. And I am looking forward to call you again for some future event. And I would see that you get enough time next time.
Yeah. Thanks. We will have it. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Thanks.